When did your new marriage nearly cost your child's life? My daughter Katie never recovered after her mother died, and I made everything worse by marrying Vivian 6 months later. I convinced myself Katie needed a mother figure while I traveled for business, but really I was just lonely, and Vivian was beautiful and 15 years younger than me. Looking back now, I see how selfish and blind I was to what was really happening in my own home. Vivian complained constantly about Katie's behavior whenever I called from Singapore or London or wherever my job had taken me that week. She said Katie was stealing from her and staying out all night gambling at the new casino downtown. When I'd ask Katie about it during my brief trips home, she'd beg me to believe that Vivian was lying and trying to turn me against her. I always took my wife's side because it was easier than admitting I'd failed as a father. The weekend everything fell apart, I was in Tokyo closing a merger when Vivian called screaming about finding casino chips under Katie's mattress. She said they were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and proved Katie was mixed up with dangerous people. I told her to wait until I got home, but she said she was done enabling my daughter's addiction. The line went dead, and I couldn't reach either of them for hours. My phone finally rang at midnight Tokyo time, and Vivian was sobbing about how she'd cashed in all the chips at the casino to teach Katie a lesson. She said my daughter had gone crazy when she found out, screaming that those chips were collateral for someone else's debt and that Vivian had just signed her death warrant. I booked the first flight home, but by the time I landed, Katie had been missing for 2 days. The police said they couldn't do much since Katie was 19 and had left on her own, but I knew something terrible had happened. Vivian kept insisting she'd done the right thing by taking away Katie's gambling money, and I finally saw her clearly when she called my daughter dramatic for overreacting. I spent the next 48 hours driving to every casino, motel, and abandoned building in the city while calling everyone Katie had ever known. I slept in my car outside places she used to go and offered money to anyone who might have seen her. One of her friends finally broke down and told me the truth about how my daughter had been trying to help her roommate who owed money to loan sharks. The chips weren't even hers, which is why she'd hidden them so carefully and why she'd been so terrified when Vivian cashed them. When I got home and told Vivian she'd possibly gotten my daughter killed over someone else's debt, she actually said, well, maybe she'll learn not to lie to me next time. 3 days after she disappeared, my phone rang at 4 in the morning from a blocked number. A man's voice told me my daughter was at an abandoned hotel on the east side and I should come alone if I wanted her back alive. I drove there in my pajamas and found her in what used to be the high roller suite, chained to a poker table and rocking back and forth. Her eyes were blank and she kept flinching at nothing while muttering numbers under her breath. The paramedics explained that she'd been psychologically tortured for 3 days straight with an unloaded revolver as punishment for losing the chips. They'd forced her to pull the trigger at her own head over and over while taking bets on when she'd break completely. The gun was never loaded, but she didn't know that each time she pulled the trigger. They said the human mind isn't meant to survive that kind of sustained terror, and she might never fully recover. When I confronted Vivian at the hospital, she tried to justify what she'd done by saying Katie needed tough love. I looked at my daughter sedated in that hospital bed, flinching even in her sleep at the sound of the heart monitor's clicks, and felt a rage I'd never experienced before. I told Vivian to pack her things and get out of my house before I got back from the hospital, or I'd have her arrested for theft since those chips weren't Katie's property to begin with. My daughter still wakes up screaming about empty chambers and can't handle any clicking sounds without having a complete panic attack. The divorce was finalized last month, and I spend every day trying to earn my daughter's forgiveness for choosing my new wife over her when she needed me most.